turn it up. All right. Hi everybody, and welcome to Patch Lab. I know I haven't done these in a long time. I'm sorry, but life kind of gets behind me. Actually, I was going to take a break after the holiday anyway, and then I had to let me mute the Buchla here for a second. I was going to take a break after the holiday anyway, but as it turned out, after the holiday then I had to set up and prepare for the show that I played last night, which, even though it was an internet-based, live stream, I still sweated the hell out of it because it's been so long since I've done an actual performance and not just these patch labs. I felt like I should try extra hard. So if you haven't seen my performance, if you're interested in it, which is going to be what this patch lab is based on, sort of dissecting what I did yesterday. But if you haven't seen that yet, I uploaded it to this YouTube channel earlier today, and it's still available on the Twitch channel. And that all the links where you can watch it are in the video description, I hope. But definitely check out the New York Modular Society stuff. They do shows like this all the time. They're super fantastic. And the guys that were performing with me, I guess, were really interesting and really worth watching as well. So if you're not familiar with New York Modular Society, go check them out. It'll definitely be worth your time if this is the kind of thing you enjoy. Otherwise, why would you be here? So check that out. I'm assuming okay, voice sounds good on headphones. Good. Thank you, Yotis. Yotis, I did not see your email today. I got to be honest, I only check my email once every couple days. And sometimes when I do, I don't make it that far into it. Email is something that I struggle with because I tend to get a lot of it, but I will check it out. So anyway, what I wanted to do today, because we haven't done this in a while, and this will be a little bit different than the sort of general patch lab where I just sort of start with a patch and start building from scratch, essentially. This one's going to be sort of the opposite of that. I'm going to dissect what we've done, what I did over the last couple weeks, and sort of explain why I did it and why I thought it was interesting, or why I thought maybe things didn't really work out as well as they could. To do that, I had to sort of rearrange my studio a little bit, so everything's in a little bit different place. The camera that I'm talking into now is a little bit lower than it normally is, so I feel like I have to stoop down. It's kind of weird because I have a shelf between the camera and myself that has some gear on it, which you can see. There we go. You can see this shelf here. The camera is behind the shelf, so it's sort of odd. And to get it so I wouldn't see the camera in the picture, I had to stoop it down. So I'm sorry I look a little hunched down today. It's kind of what it is. We've got some weird camera angles today. This is the overview camera angle. You can see almost the whole setup that I used. There are two synthesizers, one here and one here that you can't see. And then also over here, there is a cascading delay network that was tied to a video capture device attached to my iPad so that I could capture the audio from the little snippet of James Burke at the end. And I used the cascading delay network because the crappy little HDMI to analog video output, it output both audio and video, but they were out of sync. So I just used the delay network to delay the audio long enough to sync it. And I thought in the end, the effect was kind of cool. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. I didn't turn on the video side of things. Again, watch the performance. It's at the end of the performance if you want to see that. I thought it was kind of fun. And then there's two synthesizers up top here that we're not going to talk about either. I'll play them briefly so you know what the sounds are. This was the first one. And both of these sounds came in during the sort of the techno part, the EDM part. I don't know what you would call it. This is one sound from the synthesizer on the right. And this was the other sound. This is the synthesizer on the left. This one I played a little lead on. So for the sake of, I can't show you those instruments, so it'd be weird to explain what's going on. But basically, there's 2 instruments up there that I used in the sounds. I can't show you. I'm sorry, but we can talk about all the other sounds, and there's a lot of really other interesting sounds here. Related to the comments, if you guys want to shout comments at me while I'm doing this, my comments are over here. Where am I at? There I am. My comments are off to my left today, so if you want to shout comments at me, that's fine, but at me so I can see. Otherwise, it's just sort of a stream, and then I'll go back and look at them later. So if you want me to notice it while it's going by, at me in it, and it comes up in yellow and I can see it. So let's talk about the patch. I guess we'll start first with this camera angle and talk about this instrument here, which looks like a voltage lab. It's actually not a voltage lab. It's the Voltage Lab touch controller and the Voltage Lab logo panel, we called this. But in the place of an actual Voltage Lab is an SV1B. The Voltage Lab that normally lives there is out on loan because the person that wanted to use it obviously can't get one. So I just lent him mine, so I feel it looked sad without an instrument in there. So I put the SV1B in there, and it actually worked out really well. So in this patch, that was the sort of the drone, and what it is it's 2 saw waves. So we're going to talk about this first because I don't have a camera for this one, but we can listen to it. And so what it is it's just the SV1B, it's oscillator 1 and oscillator 2, both patched into the mixer, sine wave and saw wave from oscillator 1 and saw wave from oscillator 2. And that then runs into the filter. The filter frequency cutoff is being modulated with the LFO from the SV1B. And I have the pitch of each oscillator mapped to the left and right side of the voltage lab. So I can modulate it, or I can change the pitch. Yeah, Daju, I'm going to talk about all the stuff down the larger system. I would definitely get to that. So this is what I'm doing with this. It's very basic, but it worked out really, really well. It's sort of an interesting drone. I'm not even going through the VCA, or the envelopes aren't involved in anything. It's literally just coming out of the low-pass filter output directly into the mixer. I think that worked out really well. So we'll turn that down now. Okay, now let's talk about the one other thing that's sort of outside of this little world here. Let's go to the Buchla cam. And the reason there's a separate Buchla cam is there's no other way I could get to it. But it works like that. So the Buchla played the little part in the track that sounded, well, like a Buchla. So this is what I used for the Buchla patch, and what it is to me this is sort of the epitome of what Buchla sounds like. If you're looking for a stereotypical Buchla sound, this is, in my mind, this is sort of it. I have the oscillator patched into Dynamics Manager, which I'm then plucking with the dual function generator. I'm creating the random pattern using the gibbon from right over here, and that's giving me the gate signal here, which is the gate in, and then this input here is the pitch that I'm just using as a modulation source to modulate how much the modulation oscillator affects both the amplitude and timbre of the oscillator. So it's really basic. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is I am also modulating the the openness of the Dynamics Manager or low pass gate. So if I just open it up manually, this is what happens. So I have an LFO from the chain reactor, which is covered in a big wad here, but there's the chain reactor, to get me a weird LFO, and then I could set the amount of that going into the Buchla. And it had a really, really interesting effect, I thought. I think that sounds really, really interesting. I need to boost my mic a little bit. All right. There's going to be some noise. No, that's way loud. All right, there's going to be some noise in the background from my mic. There's nothing I can do about that. If you want to hear me over the rad synths. All right, is that better? Hopefully you can hear me better now. I'll stick the mic closer to my face. So this is, again, we are modulating the level of the low-pass gate with a chain reactor, just giving it a weird sort of non-linear LFO. So it sort of wobbles in and out. I thought it was just a little bit more interesting than what would be the standard Buchla sounds, which in my mind is this. So it just adds a little tension to it. It makes it a little bit more interesting to listen to. Once the track sort of got going, I then added... Whoops. I then added a phase shifter to give it, to make it sort of blend in with the rest of the track. Once everything else sort of happened. So that's, we will mute that, and now we'll move on to the main synth here. And I'll just sort of go by sound what I did. And I can, oh, when can I show the Voltage Lab 2? Yeah, I'm not going to show the Voltage Lab 2 today. I don't have one to share. But no, it's going to be a while. What reverb is the Buchla going through? All the instruments are going through, and I don't have a camera on it, but they're all going through the MIDI Verb 2, which is my favorite reverb. And I used the MIDI Verb 2 and the MIDI Verb 3 on this, but most of the instruments are going through the MIDI Verb 2. The two instruments up above that I didn't show are going through the MIDI Verb 3, but all this stuff down here and the modular are going through the 2. Yeah, so there we go. Now let's talk about the Voltage Lab. The Voltage Lab was making the bubble sound. This sound. Which, when I made this sound, I was trying to do something that sounded organic and natural. And I thought, well, I'll do the animal sound patch. And so I started with the animal sound patch, but I felt like I had already done that. So I wanted to do something that was maybe a little bit different than that. So I went with bubbles. And I think they work pretty well. So all the sound, for whatever it is coming right now out of the Voltage Lab. So you can see function generator A is opening up the dynamics controller, and that's what's letting sound out, and that's being modulated by quite a few things. The waveform is just a basic primary oscillator waveform with some warp on it. And I'm not even doing a whole lot of modulation because it kind of worked like it was, so I didn't mess with it too much. Once I sort of fell into this sound, it made me smile so much that I ended up just kind of letting it be. When I first patched it up, it was really harsh, so I did tone it down a bit, but I think it sounds great. Is the phaser in line with the Buchla or is on an aux of the mixer? No, it's in line with the Buchla. It's patched. The output of the Buchla is patched into the input of the Boss phase shifter PH3 pedal. And that, you can see it right here. So this side is the Buchla and this side's going into channel 1 of the mixer. I have this Studio Live PreSonus mixer, so I don't have a big fancy mixing board to do a whole lot with. So it kind of is what it is. I have the reverb is on the FX bus. So that's what I'm using the FX bus on the mixer for, is the MIDI verb. So the Voltage Lab is definitely just all bubbles. That's kind of all it's doing. As I was making this patch, we can zoom out here. Bloop. As I was working on this patch, I kept needing more and more modules, maybe that weren't in my setup. So I kind of went through, and halfway through, I ripped out all the modules that I wasn't using and replaced them with modules that I needed. So I ended up adding more oscillators. I ended up adding the phase shifter up here. You know, I have a second double helix in here now. The switch module, which I haven't used the switch module in, well, it's been years, but it became invaluable because that became then how I could mix stuff in and out. And I wanted stuff to, and I could have certainly used the mixer over here to mute stuff, but I wanted the trails. So you can see if I turn the bubbles back on, I get the trails of the delay. So I was able to put the switch, which is basically an on-off switch, between the output of this and the delay that it's patched in. Is the Buchla standalone system, or did I build it from modules? They used to anyway. They used to sell this as a system. It is modules. It's a collection of their modules, and they used to sell it as the Lem Snoopy system. I don't know if they still do that anymore. But I think it. I got this years and years ago when we were thinking about doing a low pass gate module, because I wanted to hear the Buchla low pass gate. I wanted to own it. I wanted to really understand it, so that when we did our low pass gate, I could make it sound at least as good to me as the Buchla, if not better, and sort of really fine tune it to what I wanted to hear. So and most of the time when I buy stuff for that reason, it doesn't really stick around. I'll keep it around for, 6 months or so, and then I'll sort of sell it because I have no interest in it. But this system in particular, I do enjoy. I use it from time to time. Every couple months I'll pull it out. And for this show, it seemed to make a lot of sense to use it because it had the sound I was going for. So back to this. So the bubbles were our first sound, and the second sound then is that sound. And what we're doing here, and I've bundled up some of the cables. I did this for the performance. I bundled them up over here so that I could see and reach the mixer. I bundled them up here and here so that I could get to the switch module and the percussion sequencer over here. Normally I don't do that, and I have been known to giggle at other people that do. And now I understand why, and I feel like an ass. Because they were right and I was super wrong. It's a great way to do things. I would recommend it to everybody. So back to this sound. This sound it's clearly the local florist all day long. Let's see how we have it patched up. So the local florist is getting the output of this double helix over here, which is a sine wave going through the low pass gate. And it probably, let's see what it sounds like dry. I'm sure it sounds ridiculous. So it's really just a burst of energy that I'm getting from the double helix, as you can hear. There's not a whole lot going on there. It's like an attack, and that's it. So you get the attack from the double helix, and then mix that with the plucking of the local florist. It just rings out so beautifully. And that obviously has a dump truck or reverb on it too. So if I turn the reverb off, I can hear it flat. And it still sounds really nice like this. That's sort of a nice test. If you can turn the reverb off on the sound and it's still interesting, that's a good sound. But I wanted this sound to be huge. I wanted it to sort of be that sound that as you're jamming on the track later on, this would come in and just sort of break things up and kind of hit you over the head a little bit and disorient you a little bit. And that was the idea behind that. Second track we have here is using the other local floor, so a very similar way, very similar sound. I wanted it to be a little bit different. I wanted it to be a little bit more fragile. And a little higher pitched. And I think this one also works really, really well. So what are we doing with this one? We'll follow the wires back. This sound is the double helix up here, and it's instead of taking the sine wave this time, we're using the blade wave. And we have a little bit of modulation going on the blade wave, which we are modulating with the chain reactor, because I wanted it to be a little bit more random instead of a steady, steady sine wave or a steady triangle wave. So I used the chain reactor for that. And I also wanted it to be a little smoother, so I didn't want to use like the true random, like from a Gibbon or something like that, where it's more stepped. I wanted it to be a bit flowy, but kind of all over the place. And I know I could have used a slew to generate that from a random, but I had the chain reactor, and if you have a chain reactor, it's the thing to use. So these two together then I think play really well. And surprisingly, it wasn't because I'm using the oscillators as sort of the initial burst of the sound. It was actually a lot easier to tune than I thought it was going to be. At first I thought I would have to patch these and then just struggle to get the tuning. But it turned out to not be too bad to keep them kind of in tune with everything else. And I know this entire set, this entire show was sharp. I can see that from the synthesizers that are up above my head here. I had to tune them sharp, but by the time I got to those guys, everything was sort of so embedded that I wasn't gonna come back down with a tuner and everything. It just didn't seem to make sense. It sounded good to me, and I thought that was good enough. So those are those two sounds. And what do we have left here? We have a bass line. And if you're listening to this on a laptop, you probably can't hear it at all. But the bass line is up here. It's the SV1B, and this is the sine wave straight into the VCA. I bypassed everything in the middle. This is literally just a sine wave that is patched into my little switch that goes into the mixer. And that's all it is. Mostly one of the reasons I did that is I wanted that low siney bass line, but also every module in this system is patched, and I needed the bits of the filter for other things. So because of that, by the time I got to the bass line, which I think was the last thing that I didn't have a whole lot of choice as to what the bass sounded like. And initially I thought I would use, and the reason it became the last thing was I thought I was going to use the ARP 2600 for the bass line, but in the end I thought for simplicity I would just use this, and it worked out great. I think using the ARP would have looked cool, but there would have been no benefit there from using this giant thing. So instead, during the video, if you watch it, it's sort of in the background behind me on the floor. Herman is, my buddy Herman Soy Sauce is in the process of moving at the moment and asked me to care for it again. So it's once again in my possession. which sadly I haven't even turned it on yet. And this time he even let me the keyboard. So one of these nights I'm going to get the ARP 2600 out and actually attach the ARP 2600 keyboard to it and give it a go. But it hasn't happened yet. So that's the bass line. So those are that forms sort of the beginnings of the track. And if we listen to everything that we have kind of so far, you know, the track started with the Buchla and the drone. And the drone again was just two saw waves from two separate oscillators where I could control the pitch of them independently using the touch controller from the Voltage Lab. And I wanted to keep these sounds very simple. Warm and simple was really the goal for these guys. So you can hear there's not a lot of resonance on it, and the resonance never really opens up that much. Yeah, Yodas, I could do a patch lab with the ARP one of these days. The problem is setting it up in a way that makes it happen. Hello, Herman. I'm glad you love your local florist. So this is the Buchla and the SV1B. We can add that I added the water when it decides to come on again. A lot of this stuff is sort of pseudo-random, so I didn't have absolute control of when stuff happened. Now if we mute this stuff, now this sound here sort of sounds like banging on a guitar string. That actually is the top row of the sequencer down here. So that is a sequenced pattern. I tried to make it not a typical on-off, or, you know, I tried to make it less rhythmic to try to throw you off a little bit, although it is 16 steps, so it's not a polyrhythm or anything. But it's not a standard pattern that you would hear. And then the bottom row of the sequencer, again, 16 steps, that's the bass line pattern. And again, that one I try not to do super, I don't know, I thought this was kind of an interesting bass line. Okay, so the last set of sounds we have are the drums. And these, I don't know if these have translated well from yesterday to today, but let's give it a shot. We'll start with the kick. Now, if you've watched any of these patch labs, or if you've seen any of my performances with Herman, you've heard this kick drum a million times. It's the kick drum that I use. It's the kick drum that Herman likes to use. And I'm happy to explain it again. It is our low-pass gate module, and I'm pinging that with the trigger out of the percussion sequencer. I'm then running the output of that. Oh, and it's in filter mode with full resonance. So essentially what you're doing is it's self-oscillating. You're just opening up and closing it. I'm running the output then into the Crow filter, and just doing that just to roll off some of the high end. If I open it up, you can hear it gets snappy. You can also hear, because this is the Crow, it has some drive, and the drive can go way up too. But that wasn't this patch. So I'm just rolling off some of the snap, mellowing out the kick a little bit. And that's it. And that goes into the mixer, and that's a kick drum. Super simple, but it sounds so good. So the second sound then is this sound here. And let's see what we have going on here. This one I honestly forget what's going on. So we're going to trace some wires back and see what we've got going on. All right, so this, now that I know, I can explain it. This one is oscillator, primary oscillator, the right one over here. And we're taking the fragments out of that, which we're not modulating at all. It's just basically a static sound. We are FMing it with the noise from the SV1B. And we could change the fragments density here, and you can see. I think the original idea for this sound was to be some type of snare. But as I started patching, I wanted it to be more electronic than that. I didn't want the drums to really sound like typical drums. So we'll take the output of that oscillator. We're running it through the filter here. And again, it's a static filter. It's not being modulated or anything. And we're taking the bandpass out of that, running that into a dynamics controller, which then we are plucking with the percussion sequencer. So this percussion sound does maybe get a little bit needlessly complicated. This is the raw sound coming through into the dynamics controller. But if you roll all that high end off, I think it sounds pretty cool. And then the output of that is what's going into the mixer. All of the drums are submixed through the Giraffe up here because I didn't have enough channels in the mixing console module. So all 4 drums are being submixed in the Giraffe here. So this is the 3rd percussion sound. And this is sort of an odd one. So let's see what's going on with this one. You would think I would remember, but sadly no. Some of these sounds, it had been a while since I patched them. So this sound is the first primary oscillator here. And we're listening again to the fragments output. And the fragment density's all the way down. We turn it up, we get this sort of laser gun sound. That might sound good too. Yeah, see, I would have been happy with that too. And that goes into the other side of the dual dynamics controller here. So we turn that back down. We open this up. This is the sound that's coming. We can open that up a little bit for fun. I kind of like it more like this. I gotta redo the whole thing now. Oh no. So, one more sound. And that's this sound. Which is sort of a drippy, sort of percussive sound. And this sound was meant to be a sort of stepping stone between the Buchla, which is this. But by the time this would have come in, the Buchla would have had the phase shifter on it, so it would have sounded like this. And the reason this sound... Alright, turn the Buchla back off. The reason this sound, I wanted it to sound similar to the Buchla is I wanted, because this was clocked, and this was now part of the percussion and part of the drum loop, I wanted it to sort of blend the two together, so it wasn't jarring when I started going to this static 32-step loop. I wanted it to feel like you sort of fell into the loop. And I didn't want you to even realize that the drums had sort of happened until the kick drum maybe came in. And you're like, oh, this is very rhythmic. No, that was the illusion I was going for. I think if I had practiced a little more, I'd done a little bit better job at it, but it was okay. Yotis asks, how long was I working on this patch before the performance? This patch has been I've been working on this probably a couple weeks, which is one of the reasons why I haven't been doing any live streams. It's been slowly building up. In the evenings, I would come down for an hour or two and just sort of patch around and see what I liked and change a bit and modify and add something and take something out. So, as I'm sure you guys that patch at home understand, to create what I was trying to do, which was 20 minutes worth of interesting music, I felt like I needed some really strong sounds, and I needed something that wasn't just, hey, here's this one patch. I felt like it had to have changes and it had to have more involved. So because of that, it took me a long time to build it up. So together, all the drums... Oh, I didn't break this one down. Let's break it down. Let me figure out where it is here. Yeah, I would have never found that bar. Again, because it's been a couple weeks, some of these sounds, forget how I did them. So we're backtracking. We'll get there. Oh my God. This one's like a loop of fun. Okay, this patch isn't actually an oscillator. I'm literally plucking the phase shifter. So that's what's going on. The phase shifter's almost self-resonating, but it's not. So what I'm doing is I'm just plucking it with the trigger from the percussion sequencer, and that's what I'm getting. Now it is going to drone a bit when you do that, so because of that, I'm going into the dynamics controller over here, and this is opening it full up. So this is the sort of raw sound coming out of the plucked phase shifter. Which is kind of neat. And what I'm doing sort of as a trick, and I struggled with whether I could actually hear the difference, but I left it in there anyway because it was interesting to me, is I'm taking the mix out from the 8 stages, so the 8-stage mix out, and I'm taking the 16 out and mixing them together. So whether I can hear the difference, like this is this pure 16 out, and this is the pure 8 out, and then mixed together. I thought maybe it added something, I don't know. It may be an illusion, but that's okay. Illusions are fine. And then I'm modulating that with the Gibbon, a gate signal from the Gibbon, and the sample and hold from the SV1B. And that's pretty much that sound. I think it works well for what its purpose was. If we mix it here with our other percussion sounds. I think it works really well. Because it does, with the Buchla on, it kind of works. It doesn't sound too disjointed. Because I wanted the chaos of the Buchla, but I also wanted it to be rhythmic. And I think I struck a nice balance between the two. Especially when you add that sort of guitar strike that kind of pulls everything together. At our baseline. I think that works well. You've got your saw wave bed. to decide what moments, to come up with some sort of structure that said, okay, I knew how I wanted it to be start, and I knew how I wanted it to end, and it was coming up with that sort of arc that made it interesting enough to warrant, someone sitting and paying attention for the 18 or 19 minutes or whatever it ended up being. And I think I did an okay job. I know when it all came together, I know that the sort of the EDM-y part I thought was kind of fun. I thought it was definitely musical. If we go back to that, you add in your Buchla, it's sort of the crazy. I think that then the real moment it all kind of solidifies is when you add the two synths up here. And this is another sound, this high, sort of high-pitched sound. This is another one where I wanted to be a little skewed and a little closer to the Buchla, but it had to be super rhythmic. So if we just listen to that for a second, it's this sound here. So this is a polyrhythm. This, I think it's like 27 steps or something. All set, it's a 27 note loop. But I wanted it to be something that was sort of somewhere between, again, tying together the Buchla and the sort of disjointedness with the rhythmic. I think it just worked really, really well. And then the last sound added another layer of rhythm on top that sort of solidified the sort of EDM-y thing. And again, this is another very simple sound, but I think what it does is it sort of glues everything together and it gives you some kind of a lead. So I played the keyboard on that synth with the SV1B together at the same time. I don't know if I can talk and do that at the same time, but this. It's kind of fun, I guess. I don't know, I had a blast doing it. So that's kind of how everything came together. And let me mute some of this stuff here. There we go. We'll leave the Buchla on because it's fun. Yoda says I should have done a throwback to some of the old streams where I show the secret synths, but I cover them in red tape. I came really close to doing that, Yoda's. But the amount of time it would have taken me to cover these guys in red tape, it would have been hours and hours of meticulously working red tape. And it didn't seem worth it when I could just put a shelf slightly out of camera. And because I had to use them too, I had to perform on them. One of them I'm actively playing. So it didn't happen. I did here. Hold on one second. Sorry, I thought I had it handy. I do not. I did cover... I don't know where it is. I did cover a module in red tape. It was not the oscillators for use in this, but I ended up not using it in the patch. so I took it out. But yeah, the red tape was not an option. Although I did have, and I don't know if you guys do this, but like right down here next to my tea mug here, I had a big red arrow using the same red tape that said plug in Burke. I wrote it on the red arrow because this patch cable right here is the output from the HDMI to analog thing that I was using for James Burke's speech, and I had to unplug it during the performance. I couldn't leave it just plugged in because I don't know if it'll do it right now. I don't know if the thing that it was plugged in is turned on, but if I plug it in, we'll see. No, it's not turned on. But the digital noise coming out of this cable, because the HDMI to VGA little adapter I was using it was just garbage, and it was just spitting terrible noise. So I had to wait until I actually needed this and at the last second plug it in, which I was terrified that I was going to turn on the video of James Burke talking but forget to plug him in. So I had made several notes. This one. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, it says plug in Burke. This one was stuck to my iPad, which was running Plex that had the little video playing. So I had several notes reminding me to plug in James Burke so that he could be heard. Am I going to be a somewhat regular performer on the New York stream, Evan? I don't think so. They certainly invited me back, and I would love to do another one. But it is time consuming for me, not being a professional musician or someone that has a ton of time to really work on this stuff. And it really cut into, doing these live streams, because if it was a couple weeks where I just couldn't do a live stream because I had all this gear set up and I was sort of working it out and it was a mess. So I am going to do them. Maybe I'll do them, every 3 or 4 months, maybe. And then once they start doing them live in person again, maybe every 6 months or so, I would love to do one. But for me, the level of quality that I'm trying to get out there requires me, with my skill set, it requires a lot of time, because I don't maybe have the skills as a musician to do necessarily what's in my head to get it out. So I try to cover that with maybe nice video production. But yeah, I will do more, but I don't have any scheduled right now. You love his show about the massive power outage. That was, yes. What was that series called? That was The Day the Universe Changed. That was episode 1 with the massive New York power outage. The video I took it from was, the snippet I used was the episode 10 from the original Connection series. It was the last minute or so of the series where he's sort of summing it up. But if you're not familiar with Connections, you're not familiar with James Burke, strongly recommend you dig it up. If you're interested in history and science and technology, the guy is an absolute genius historian and really worth checking out. And that's kind of why I love putting him in things, because he's a definite hero of mine. So I love sneaking him in here and there to maybe spread the word a little bit about James Burke. His stuff seems to be harder to find than it should be. Years ago, I bought DVDs off of Amazon and ripped them onto my Plex server, but I suspect there's other ways to find his stuff out there, and I would recommend it. The Day the Universe Changed is great. Connections are great. All of them are really, really good. You hope I can stick around in the Discord. We have a super chill community. Yeah, the community seems really cool, and I'm absolutely going to check it out, because I do watch the live streams almost every single time they're on. I don't always comment because I'm usually busy doing something, but I think they're really great. And some of the artists are absolutely fantastic. Yes, James Burke is still alive, Herman. I don't think he's doing a ton of stuff anymore, but he's still kicking. Thank goodness. Okay, so that's sort of the end of the scheduled programming, so to speak. I just wanted to talk through this. If you guys have any questions specifically about the patch, I'm not afraid to sort of tear it apart anymore. I wanted to hold it together long enough to do the live stream and sort of talk about it. But now that I've sort of got it out there, I have a record of it. I uploaded it to YouTube today. It's also on the New York Modular Society Twitch stream. You could watch it there along with all the other performers that performed last night. So I would recommend watching it there as opposed to watching my stream, just because you can check out the other performers too, and they're absolutely worth it. So my next step is to tear this thing down, and I have to do a couple demo videos over the weekend of some new stuff, and that'll surface at some point. And then now that I'm back to normal, I can do more patch labs, and we can start to get weird again, which will be cool. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me in the live chat right now. This would be a good time for questions and answers. And then I think I could probably just do a live jam on this. And I've been hesitant to kind of deconstruct it as I've been jamming over the last couple weeks, because once you get a sound, you're like, if you mess with it, it might disappear forever. But I'm not afraid of that anymore. So I think the live jam now will just be, just mangle it. It'll sort of destroy itself as it goes along here. I think that's the way to go. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And if you guys have questions, shout them at me in the chat, and I'll just leave the mic on while it's getting weird. Any news on the Gibbon coming out? The Gibbon and all the other Zoom modules, the Crow and the Giraffe, will be available soon. The Gibbon, I have the Crow and the Giraffe modules are in the shop. Actually, the ones in my case here these are actual production modules, so I have those. The Gibbon shipped to us today, so I will have those very shortly, early next week, I hope, and we'll get them tested. I still think there's a couple little bugs in the firmware. They've been, it's been tough to, test the firmware because it's random, and a lot of the code is written in ways to sort of fool your ears, and so trying to distinguish between what it's doing wrong on purpose and what it's doing wrong not on purpose has been a challenge. But I think it's just about there, and it'll certainly be there by next week. There's just a couple little things in there that I just want to double check to make sure it does what it does. But yeah, I've been using these two now successfully for a couple weeks, and I think it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So yeah, they should be out relatively soon. Pittsburgh Modular seems impervious to COVID. This is a good comment. Pittsburgh Modular seems impervious to COVID. So many companies right now are really slow in production. Evan, you are absolutely right. And we are not impervious, unfortunately, to COVID. And the reason you haven't heard about all the new, interesting, fun stuff that we're doing is because of COVID. And for a lot of myriad of reasons. But the reason why these instruments up here are up here and not in sight, COVID. The reason we didn't have a bunch of stuff for NAMM, COVID. But we had our sort of backup plans were things like the Zoom modules and things like the local florist, where we could do short runs of something relatively quickly and get those out. And so what we did was we took these larger products and chopped up bits and pieces that we thought would be interesting on their own and said, okay, this product is going to be a while, so let's hand out tasters, essentially. Let's say, here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of this. What do you think? Enjoy this while we work on the bigger stuff. And so that's been our kind of solution to that. It's not, this is a tough time for everybody, and our problems are minimal in the grand scheme of things. but it's certainly something that we have actively been struggling with and trying to work around. That's a true that's a true thing. Oh, I would never murder a unicorn. I'm a pacifist. There will be no unicorn murders. I even get really sad when my fish die, and I don't think fish are that bright, and they're not that large, and I don't name them, but I still get sad when I gotta fish them out of the tank. Oh, hello, Create. Do you hug all your modules before you ship them out? That was the rumor, I thought. I thought so. I don't know. So let's do a jam. And instead of, I'm not going to do a big build-up. I'm just going to, I think instead of that, because the fun part for me will be destroying this thing, I think the jam will be, let's just start with everything on full EDM and then slowly destroy it until it's done, and then we can all go about our lives for the day. Does that sound good? I hope so. So we can start, because I didn't give them enough sound on their own, so we'll start with the secret stuff. These are the two secret things. We'll let those go. We'll start with that. That's sort of a strange way to start. It's kind of in the middle. But that's okay. It works once you have the bass. There we go. We do bring the dog into the shop now and then, although he doesn't really shed that much. He mostly just barks. That's cool, just using the first two drum sounds. It just adds enough. That's good. programmed into this synth, I think, a week and a half ago, and I haven't finished the firmware on it, so it doesn't save anything when you turn it off. So this synth has been running now continuously for a week and a half, running this loop over and over again, which is an interesting test for firmware, I guess. I'm anxious to do something interesting or something else with it. Wrong mute button. This sound is the same way, although this sound, because it's just an arpeggio of one note, this instrument has been turned off. This one's just a single note arpeggio, but then I'm transposing it. Again, just a nice use of a saw wave on that. If I had to pick a waveform, saw wave. I know Nick Babs also with modulation. Saw waves are where it's at. We dropped the drone. Opens it up a little bit. Hey, bud! Everybody watching, Kevin Nicol in the comments. That's my brother. Live from Columbus, Ohio. Four saws. Oh, I gotta check that out. I like the saw wave. Oh, I don't know what that's the stereo outs patched into my audio interface. I would love a breadth. I don't want to pay to perform in Super Booth though. That's the secret to Super Booth. If you're a manufacturer and you want to perform, it costs you, and I don't want to pay for that. I think the exception to that would be Ken Macbeth. I don't think Ken Macbeth pays for anything. If you haven't seen Ken Macbeth's performance from the last Super Booth, I would recommend the Super Booth Vimeo page and looking it up. I can't remember the name of his band, but I'm sure a Google search would find it for you, and worth it. If you're not familiar with Ken Macbeth, he does Macbeth synthesizer. I don't know what his company's called. Macbeth. Really, really talented designer, but live he's sort of insane. I think an analog would be like the singer from the Jesus Lizard, if you're familiar. I don't know, but something along those lines. It's fantastic. So I'm gonna go through and select all the channels, channel effects, morph. We'll see how fast this drum beat dissolves into chaos. I don't think it's going to take very long. Victor, we should have new clock experiments soon. Herman is, I'm sure he'll tell you in the comments, but Herman is in the process of moving alongside recovering from injury. But once that's all, the dust settles, we have a way that we feel like we can do it safely again, and we're going to do it. So as soon as we can, we will. It's going to be super fun. Yeah, you can hear the patterns already starting to change. What we set out to accomplish tonight, which was to describe this and then destroy it, and I feel like we certainly have done both of those things. So any last minute comments in the chat, let me know. Otherwise, I have a few things I would like to mention. The zoo modules are coming up in a few weeks. We'll have more information on those. If you've been hoping to get a hold of one of our cases and haven't been able to find them in stock, we are now restocking suppliers. We had an employee leave the middle of last month, and it's taken us a bit of So the case availability will be there. We're selling them through our website now, in addition to dealers, so you can get cases at pittsburghmodular.com, which is my website, and you can ship them out direct from us. Otherwise, you can get them from your favorite local dealer that stocks Pittsburgh Modular stuff, if that's a thing for you too. The local florist sold out instantly. Be sure there's none of those left. Yeah, I'm gonna do, now that I'm done with this sort of thing and I've taken my little post-holiday break, I'm gonna be back with a lot more patch labs. They're gonna go back to the standard style patch lab, which would be, oh, we need something, jeez. There we go. We'll go out with the Buchla. There we go. Oh, where'd I go? Oh my god. Alright, we'll go out with the Buchla. The modulation still works on the Buchla. There we go. Yeah, so I'm gonna, now that I'm finished with setting up for the show and doing the show and all the prep that involved with that in my holiday break, I'm gonna start doing a lot more of these patch labs. There'll be the old format, which is stripping everything down and kind of starting from scratch. Every now and then I'll come up with something that, and then tear it down. But most of the time, the patch labs really are that. They're me experimenting, me trying to learn, and chatting with you guys during the process. So I hope to see you guys again soon while I'm doing that. Is the Crow a zoo module? Yes, the Crow is a zoo module. It has a picture of zoo modules last week. And it took forever to take a picture of the Crow where you could actually see the graphics. So I had to shine the light across it sort of sideways so that the artwork would shimmer enough that I could capture it on the camera. So on the webpage for the Crow, there's going to be two pictures of it. There's going to be a picture of it where you can see the artwork because I held the light perfectly so you can see what it looks like and you can see all the text. But then there's going to be a second picture, which is sort of a top-down shot like I do with all of our modules, showing you what it actually looks like 99% of the time, which is black on black, where it just looks like a plain black panel in your case. I want to be really clear with people when I say black on black. This is seriously black on black. But because the Crow is just, it's just anger and growly and a lot of overdrive, I thought it was appropriate. Yotis asks, any news on when you can announce the stuff you've teased but haven't officially showed us yet? Nope. No, there isn't. Nope. I don't have a date. I'm sure I'll be teasing more stuff soon, but that's the best I can do. Yeah, so I'm going to head off now. Something's wrong with the internet here. So if it's been dropping out or whatnot, I apologize for that. We do have some more limited runs planned. We have the zoo modules, which are a limited run, and we have some other ideas for additional zoo modules, because I like the idea of these sort of small, fun modules where I can get creative with the artwork and the sound and feature set of them a little bit. And again, these are circuits that are lifted from other things that we can put out quickly. Like the Gibbon, the heart of the Gibbon, that random circuit really is based on the random that's in the voltage lab. And the Gibbon, the code of the Gibbon is closer to the random that'll be in the voltage lab too, but its spiritual successor is sort of the voltage lab. So if you have a voltage lab and you've played with the random, I've sort of brought out a few more of the controls. Really, that's the thing. Yotis asks, will the zoo modules be available as a package? Yes. Initially, they'll be available in a 3-pack where you get one of each. And then after a couple weeks, if there's still some remaining, we will open them up for individual sales. But the idea that it would be a 3-pack that we could offer and go from there. Just trying it. If that doesn't work, obviously we'll sell them individually. I'm happy to sell them. But initially, I want to see if this idea of doing sort of package modules is interesting to people or not. So we'll see. It's an experiment, which is another thing that's kind of neat about these Zoo modules, and about like the local florist is another example of these experiments. Really, is to test ideas and see what people are interested in, what people are less interested in, and getting feedback on like, hey, I like this, super great, you know, if it did this or that. So we'll see. Create audio, you get nothing. Nothing. I'm still waiting on my second nifty case. I do have a nifty case. So that was the one, there's a bit about this. I talked about it at the very beginning. I didn't talk about it after that, I don't think. I did use, I was going to try to reach for it here, but I think that would be dangerous, so I'm not going to. But I did actually use the nifty case during my live performance. I had a Pittsburgh Modular in-out in it, with the idea that the audio from James Burke went into a cascading delay network, and then into a giraffe that then came into the mixer. And that was James Burke. That's his voice that was used for that. So I had to create an entire another case to put the James Burke audio path through. So I just didn't have any room left in here. Every single module was used in this case. So I had the secondary case, again, set up there for that. All right, guys. So thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. I look forward to doing this again. And enjoy your weekend. Stay healthy, everybody. See you guys.